Welcome back to the deep dive. We are jumping into a stack of source material today that is exceptionally dense. We're moving past general theories of spiritual warfare and really zeroing in on the mechanics of intervention.
Yeah, we really are.
We are talking about the physical intersection, of the spiritual and material worlds.
Indeed. Our sources today, they draw heavily from scriptural analysis and also research focused on, well, the structure of this thing called the Irmandad, the dark spiritual brotherhood, and this concept of materialization, angelic materialization. They present a deeply provocative case.
Provocative is definitely the word.
They argue that spiritual entities, both obedient angels and fallen demons, intervene directly, physically, in our realm.
So our mission today is, well, it's ambitious. We're going to dissect the evidence that argues for the full corporeality, the physical reality of these spiritual beings when they manifest.
Right.
This isn't just about apparitions or visions. And this evidence, it culminates in a highly unsettling, almost like biologically focused theory. It's concerning demonic reproduction, directed genetic mutation, and how all of this might explain the original appearance of the gigantes, the giants mentioned in ancient texts.
And we really have to start with this core paradox that the source material identifies. It's a puzzle.
Okay.
Why is it that, despite what seems like overwhelming scriptural evidence detailing the immense, tangible physical power of God's loyal angels,
Right.
modern understanding, even among believers sometimes, seems to assign greater, or at least more immediate and common, supernatural power to the devil and his servants?
That's a really good question. You hear about demonic activity all the time, almost casually sometimes.
Exactly. So we're diving deep into the texts to see why the material evidence suggests the power of the light side is actually vastly underestimated.
Okay, let's unpack this core assertion then. Angels aren't just apparitions. They are fully corporeal when necessary. They can interact with matter exactly like a human would.
Right. And the source immediately leans on Genesis 19.
Yeah.
The account of Sodom and Lot. It sees this as foundational proof.
Sodom and Lot. Okay, walk us through why that's such a key piece of evidence.
Well, Genesis 19 is kind of perfect because it gives us multi-sensory proof of their apparent humanity at that moment. Lot encounters two visitors.
Just sees them as men, right?
Exactly. Treats them simply as traveling men. He insists on the most basic physical hospitality. They entered his house. He prepared a full meal. And crucially, the text explicitly states they ate.
They ate. Consumed physical food, which implies
A physical body capable of digestion, material processes.
And think about the other details. They were planning to physically sleep in beds.
Right.
Lot, a physical human, was arguing for their safety based on, the code of hospitality for ordinary men. He didn't seem to have any spiritual revelation about who they were at first.
Not at all. But the evidence gets even stronger when the men of Sodom arrive, demanding these visitors be brought out.
Right.
The sources emphasize that the mob was confundidos with men. They were completely mistaken for ordinary human travelers. This wasn't some private face-based vision only Lot could see.
No, the text says, what was it? All in the city had seen them enter.
Exactly. A public material event, visible to every eye.
Okay, so they look human, they ate like humans, and then comes the confrontation.
And it turns violent and entirely physical. When the mob tries to break down the door, the text records a very specific physical action.
What was it?
The angels physically grabbed Lot with their hands, pulled him back into the house, and secured the door.
Huh. If they were just spirits or projections, why bother with that? Why the struggle?
Precisely. They could have just teleported Lot or vanished or struck the men instantly. The act of physically grabbing a human being and dragging him inside, that proves corporeality. It's only after this completely material intervention that they deploy their supernatural power, striking the mob outside with blindness.
So the physical defense came first?
Yes. Physical preceded the spiritual intervention.
Wow. And it's stunning how deep the human disguise went. I mean, Lot's own family, his sons-in-law, they didn't believe him later when he warned them the city was going to be destroyed.
They thought he was joking.
Yeah. The people standing right next to these beings failed to see them as anything other than, ordinary guys. Maybe imposing, but ordinary.
And we see this pattern again just one chapter earlier, Genesis 18. Abraham and Sarah at the Oaks of Mamre.
Right, the three visitors.
Abraham sees three men. And again, physical necessities are front and center. Abraham offered water to wash their dusty feet.
Something only physical beings would need after a journey.
Exactly. And he prepared this huge banquet. Fresh beef, bread, milk. And again, the text says they ate.
And the source uses this to highlight how sort of mundane their appearance must have been. Sarah laughed. Or was it? In her intimate self when she heard the promise of a son.
Yeah, she wasn't laughing out of terror or awe at some glorious being. She was laughing at the words spoken by someone who appeared ordinary enough for her to doubt his divine message.
Just like you might doubt some stranger making a wild promise.
Exactly that kind of doubt. And remember the connection the source makes. The main purpose of this visit in Genesis 18 was actually to set up Abraham's intercession for Lot.
Ah, linking it directly to the Sodom story.
Yes. So the material manifestation in Genesis 18 was the setup for the maximal physical intervention we just talked about in Genesis 19. Materiality served a critical strategic purpose.
Okay, so Genesis 18 and 19 are big ones. What else?
The third key example provided is Judges 13. This involves Manoah and the mother of Samson.
Samson's parents, right.
The angel first appeared as a man of God. His appearance, the woman described it as being like that of an angel of God. So, glorious presence noted, but structurally he looked like a man.
And Manoah, her husband, how did he react?
He treated him like a normal person, asked him to wait, asked his name, and then offered physical food. We will prepare a kid. Complete confidence in his physical presence.
Okay, but did this angel eat?
This is where the linguistic nuance, according to the source, is crucial. The angel didn't say, I cannot eat because I am spirit. He said he wouldn't accept the offering for consumption. Instead, he told them to offer it up to God.
So the source argues that implies he could have eaten but chose not to.
Exactly. Capability versus choice based on mission. He redirected the offering toward worship.
And how was his true nature revealed then?
Only at the climax. When Manoah offered the sacrifice on a rock, the angel performed a sign. The offering was consumed by fire that burst forth from the tip of the angel's staff.
From his staff, not from heaven.
From the staff he was holding. That's the moment of transformation. From seemingly ordinary man to overwhelming divine glory.
And the reaction.
Utter terror. They instantly realized who they were dealing with. Manoah cried out, we shall surely die because we have seen God. They even mistook the angel's glory for God himself.
So that proves the capacity to move seamlessly between a totally convincing human disguise and, well, overwhelming spiritual power, using the physical form as a strategic mask.
Just say.
Okay, so we've established, based on these sources, that spiritual beings can assume a fully physical form. The next logical question is, what do they do with that physicality?
Right. And this is where we move from simple materialization, just appearing physical, to the application of raw physical force, intervention, sometimes on a cosmic scale.
And the sources use this to make a point about power levels.
Absolutely. This section really serves as a sharp reminder of the actual scale of power loyal angels wield, which the source argues is just profoundly underappreciated today.
Okay, give us an example.
Consider Judges 6 with Gideon. Gideon prepares an offering. Fire doesn't come down from heaven in this case.
Like with Manoah's sacrifice.
Similar, but again, localized. Fire burst forth from the tip of this angel's staff, consuming the offering of meat and cakes. And the purpose: to convince one man, Gideon, that he would win a military victory.
So localized manipulation of matter, producing fire from an object.
Yes, control of elemental forces. Then you have simpler, more practical acts, like providing physical sustenance.
You mean like food and water?
Exactly. I Kings 19, the story of Elijah in the wilderness. An angel physically touched Elijah to wake him up and provided physical food, bread baked on hot stones and a jar of water, right there in the desert.
Baked bread, so the angel made of fire, baked bread.
The text implies it.
Yeah.
The source uses this to challenge us. If an obedient angel can physically manipulate matter and energy to bake a fresh meal in the middle of nowhere, why do we find it so hard to believe they can interfere physically in our daily lives, or in the grand affairs of nature and physics in much more significant ways?
It makes the idea of smaller interventions seem, well, almost trivial by comparison.
And this capability directly relates to the capabilities claimed by the other side, the dark side.
How so?
If fallen angels, who the source context refers to as the Philos du Fogo, the sons of fire, or maybe they're human followers, if they claim the ability to produce fire from nothing or control nature,
which you hear about in occult circles.
Right. The source argues that only proves that the source of that power, God's loyal angels, must possess an infinitely greater and sort of purer mastery over matter and energy. It's borrowed power versus original power.
Okay, so manipulating matter, providing food. What about more consequential interventions? You mentioned stale.
And when we talk about consequential, we have to discuss mass destruction. The most, frankly, staggering data point is 2 Kings 19. King Sennacherib's Assyrian army is advancing, threatening Jerusalem.
Okay.
A single angel of the Lord killed 185,000 Assyrian soldiers in one night.
Wait, one angel.
One angel, not a legion, not a wave of plagues. One single being dispatched 185,000 human lives.
That number is hard to even grasp.
Right. That fact alone should completely reframe how we perceive the power structures in the universe. We often treat demons as the great supernatural threat, but the sources are insistent. The most powerful demonic force is fundamentally dwarfed by a single loyal angel operating under divine command.
Where does this destructive power come from? Is there a name for it?
The source links this destructive capacity to the concept of the destroyer. It's referenced in Psalm 78.49, which speaks of God sending a legion of angels carrying evils.
Angels carrying evils.
Meaning executing judgment. These are executing angels, sent by God to cause massive physical death, like the killing of the firstborn in Egypt. The source is very clear. Angels possess much, much greater destructive power than demons, whose power is ultimately derived and limited.
Okay, destruction. But their intervention isn't just about death, right? It's about protection, too. Even manipulating physics.
Absolutely. Suspending physics entirely. Think of Daniel 3, the fiery furnace. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Thrown into the fire, but didn't burn.
Right. And Nebuchadnezzar saw a fourth man inside with the aspect of a son of the gods walking unharmed inside the fire.
Total defiance of heat and combustion.
It's the ultimate display of manipulating the environment. And the source draws a parallel. If God's angel can stand unharmed in a furnace, logically, the same forces can protect us. And we shouldn't be surprised if the Philos Dufoga claim to achieve, minor versions of this, like handling fire without harm, using their borrowed corrupted energy.
Okay, manipulating fire. What about, like, physical objects? Heavy things.
Then you get the ultimate physical demonstration, the resurrection, Matthew 28. An angel descended.
And there was an earthquake.
Yes, called the Great Earthquake, and physically removed the very heavy stone from Jesus' tomb. That required maximal public physical interference, moving tons of rocks, shaking the ground.
And the guards, the Roman soldiers.
Terrified. So much so that they lost all composure and pose, becoming like dead men. Their military training meant nothing against a physical being that could literally cause seismic activity just by landing.
So brute force is definitely in their toolkit. What about more subtle physical manipulation?
We see that in the prison escape stories, Acts 5 and Acts 12.
Peter's escape.
Yes, and the apostles earlier. In Acts 5, an angel just opened the publicly secured prison doors. Straightforward. But later, for Peter in Acts 12, the angel let him pass multiple guards, undetected, until they reached the iron gate leading to the city. And that gate opened automatically.
Automatically? How?
The text doesn't specify, but it suggests either an unseen mechanism or, perhaps more likely, according to the source, the manipulation of energy fields affecting the object itself rather than just brute force pushing.
And the source connects this to potential demonic abilities.
It asks a direct application question. If God's high-ranking angels can make public iron gates open automatically, could high-ranking demons of the Armandade perform similar material manipulations? Opening locked doors, moving objects, maybe even making their adherents seem literally invisible to authorities not truly invisible, but just ignored or overlooked.
Like bending perception or manipulating probability.
Something like that. The rules of our physical world seem entirely optional for these beings, both good and fallen.
This level of power, it really clashes with the common image of angels, doesn't it?
Massively. The sources strongly critique the sanitized, culturally adopted image, the chubby babies with harps, a tradition they actually tie back to a Catholic historical suppression, maybe unintentional, of their true, powerful nature.
If they possess this level of physical power, why is the popular image so benign?
We have to look at the texts that describe their true form and glory. And it is not benign. Revelation 10.1-3 describes a strong angel. Get this. Enveloped in a cloud, face like the sun, legs like columns of fire, and a voice like a roaring lion, followed by 7 thunders.
That does not sound like a cherub.
Not even close. That's a cosmic, terrifying warrior figure.
Is that the most detailed description?
Daniel 10 is perhaps even more so. Daniel sees a man dressed in linen, shoulders girded with pure gold, his body like beryl, face like lightning, eyes like torches of fire, arms and feet like polished bronze, and a voice like the sound of a great multitude.
Wow. And how did Daniel react?
He lost all his strength, collapsed into a deep sleep, basically passed out from the sheer power. But what happened next is critical for our point about physicality.
What?
The angel then physically touched him, helped him up, before speaking his message.
A physical touch from this being of immense power.
Yes. So the source challenges us. Where is the art? Where are the cultural images that convey this majestic warrior-like being? It feels like our collective spiritual imagination has been deliberately, or maybe just culturally, muted regarding the sheer magnitude of angelic might.
Okay, this incredible physical capacity, the ability to interact with matter, to exert force, it really sets the stage for what feels like the most complex and, frankly, disturbing claim in the entire source material.
Yeah, this is where it gets very specific and, well, controversial.
If these fallen entities, demons, can materialize, influence matter, have physical interactions, we have to confront the biggest theological hurdle, reproduction.
The constraint.
Exactly. If angels, good or bad, do not reproduce, how are the mythological gigantes, the giants, born? Where did they come from?
The source material is absolutely, utterly uncompromising on this constraint. Angels, both obedient and fallen, do not reproduce. Period.
And the reasoning?
It's theological and logical. God would never grant the cursed, the demonic hierarchy, the profound privilege of creation, of generating new life independently, especially when that same privilege is denied even to the obedient angelic host.
Okay, so if they can't create life themselves, that forces a very specific mechanism for how the gigantes came about.
Yes. If they can't create life, they must use a process of profanation that relies entirely on existing human biological material.
Profanation, meaning twisting something sacred.
Precisely. And this is where the ancient, but here highly detailed concepts of the succubus and the incubus are presented. But they're framed through this lens of energy manipulation, which the source references from another work, Philotophobos.
Succubus and incubus. Okay, explain how the source outlines this process. It sounds like something out of medieval folklore.
It does, but the source presents it almost clinically, sequentially. Step 1. A single demonic entity manifests, physically, in the form of a woman, the succubus.
Okay.
It initiates relations with a human man. But the source stresses, not for pleasure, but for one express purpose.
Yeah.
To collect his sperm.
Collect it? How?
Physically, within its materialized form. Then step 2. That same entity dematerializes.
Disappears.
And rematerializes elsewhere, this time taking the physical form of a man, the incubus.
Okay, same demon, different form.
Yes. And it then has relations with a human woman, depositing the previously collected sperm.
Whoa! So the demon acts purely as like a biological courier,
Yeah.
transporter.
Exactly. A carrier or transporter of human germ cells, the sperm, from one human to another. They contribute zero genetic material of their own.
Which gets around the no creation rule.
It maintains that absolute theological requirement. They cannot create life. But, the source argues, it maximizes the profanation of the sexual act itself, which it describes as, the most intimate physical gift God gave creation, even a symbol of the bond between Christ and the church. So twisting that act is a primary goal.
Okay, but hang on. If it's purely human sperm and a human egg, why were giants born? Why the genetic alteration? Why something different from a normal human?
That is the critical juncture. And the source's answer is rooted entirely in, believe it or not, physics, or maybe metaphysics. It blames the intense energy field possessed by the high-ranking demons involved.
High-ranking demons?
Specifically, it names principalities and potestates. These are spiritual ranks described as possessing incredibly strong, potent energy fields.
Okay, so what happens?
During that process,
Yeah.
the relationship, the collection, the transport, the deposition, the human sperm is momentarily but critically exposed to this non-human, powerful energy source. The source says this high-energy exposure is what corrupts the genetic material, causes the mutation.
So it's like spiritual radiation poisoning? Is that the idea?
That's almost exactly the analogy the source uses to make it understandable. It's claiming intentional design, using this energy as a tool, and it draws a powerful, frankly terrifying analogy to modern nuclear science. Radiation exposure.
Okay, explain that analogy. We know radiation causes burns, cancer.
Right, those are the immediate effects on the person exposed. But the source points specifically to the second-generation effects. Think about the children of atomic bomb survivors.
Ah, okay. They had higher rates of birth defects, right?
Significantly higher rates of congenital defects, specific diseases, mutations. Why? Because the parents' germ cells, their sperm and ova, the very blueprints for the next generation, were altered, genetically corrupted by that powerful radiation source. The radiation didn't create new life, but it damaged the instructions within the existing life material.
And we see this principle even in controlled settings, like with X-rays.
Exactly. X-ray technicians need continuous protection. Pregnant women have to shield the fetus. It confirms that human germ cells are uniquely vulnerable to external energy sources, even invisible ones.
So the source is arguing this is the precise mechanism. The powerful energy field of these principalities acts like a kind of high-level cosmic radiation.
Yes, corrupting the human germ cells during that brief window of transport and interaction. The result, genetically mutated offspring, the gigantes. The demon, in this model, is essentially a moving, high-energy bioweapon delivery system.
That is a profoundly unsettling concept. Biological engineering using spiritual physics. Okay, so if we accept the proposed mechanism for a moment, this incubus-succubus transport system, the energy corruption, that lets us pivot to the strategic why. What's the ultimate purpose behind creating these gigantes? The source says it's not just about being physically big.
Right. The key, according to these sources, isn't primarily height, although that might be a side effect sometimes. The core mutation is genetic, and it's about capacity.
Capacity for what?
The ultimate objective, the end game, is to produce human vessels capable of fully supporting complete demonic canalization demoniaca, specifically by the very high-ranking principalities and potesties who were involved in their creation through this energy process.
Okay, wait. You need to explain full channelization. We hear about demonic possession, oppression. How is this different?
It's a matter of scale and intensity. The source implies that a normal, unmutated human body simply cannot survive the raw energy, the sheer power output required for full channelization by a high-level entity like a principality. Attempting it is described as morte certain death. The human system just burns out.
So the gigantes, they're like reinforced containers, bioengineered vessels.
That's a good way to put it. Their genetic alteration grants them a kind of physical and perhaps spiritual resilience. It allows them to manifest the plenitude dos poderes, the fullness of the powers of one of these hierarchy entities without immediate systemic failure.
They become, what, like puppets? Or more?
More like perfect hosts, capable of sustaining immense energy throughput. They become, as the source states it, almost the expression of the demon itself walking on Earth.
And the final goal of creating these vessels, the ultimate aim.
The Antichrist lineage. According to this source, the Antichrist figure cannot just appear out of nowhere, randomly chosen.
No.
No. The source argues the Antichrist must be the culmination, the peak product, of a long lineage, a long lineage of humans who have been systematically genetically altered over generations through these processes.
Why?
To provide the necessary prepared vessel, one capable of containing the maximum possible demonic manifestation on Earth. The source explicitly says this mirrors, or rather profanes, God's own strategic choice of the lineage of David for the Messiah. The planning is millennia deep on both sides.
A long lineage that suggests the very first gigantes maybe didn't look like, 15-foot monsters from a movie.
Probably not always. They might have just been the first generation with this specific genetic compromise, starting a line that would be continually subjected to this process, or perhaps interbreeding among themselves, to achieve the required level of resilience and receptivity for the final end times figure.
So each generation potentially gets closer to being able to handle that level of power.
Exactly. Closer to the required physical and spiritual capacity. And the source emphasizes that the devil is, well, persistent and hasn't relied on just one method. It outlines alternatives. Method 2 is described as the most common modern iteration.
Okay, what's method 2? Still involving the incubus-succubus?
No, this is different. Method 2 involves a human man who is already partially or fully channeled or possessed.
Right.
Especially if he himself is one of these pre-existing gigantes, capable of full channelization, having relations with a normal human woman.
Okay, so how does the mutation happen then?
The key is that the demon's energy is still present during the act, emanating from the male host. And that energy subsequently alters the genetics of the forming embryo during conception.
Ah, so the energy field is still the corrupting factor, just delivered differently.
Precisely. And crucially, the source notes, this often happens within a ritualistic context, which presumably is designed to maximize the energy saturation and demonic influence during the moment of conception.
Okay, methods 1 and 2. Is there a method 3?
The source mentions even more specific and difficult forms exist, designed to generate even more highly differentiated humans for the malignant one's purposes, particularly geared towards the end-time scenario.
Differentiated how?
This is where the source points to figures from ancient history and mythology. the semideuses da antigüedad, demigods of antiquity, the gigantes da mitologia, giants of mythology, and even the strange zoomorphicos and anthropomorphicos, animal-headed or hybrid figures found in places like Egypt.
So the source is saying those weren't just myths, they were real.
It's unequivocal on this point. It asserts these were real hybrid beings, created and managed within the structural context of this dark brotherhood, the Irmandad, for specific high-level service to the devil's long-term agenda.
Wow. Okay, the level of detail here is intense, and it extends even further down to some fascinating technical pormenors, as the source calls them, minor, but important details regarding the physics of manifestation and energy.
Yeah, a couple of interesting points to tie things up.
First, let's talk about gender and form again. The source states angels primarily assume the male form, calling it their forma original. But you mentioned they aren't limited to that.
No, their appearance is ultimately utilitarian, serving the mission. The source points to Zechariah 5.6:11. The prophet sees a vision of an ephah. It's a large basket, symbolizing the full iniquity of the earth being transported away.
Okay, who transports it?
2 women. And the context makes it clear. These are angelic beings. They even have stork wings in the vision.
Ah, so female angelic forms explicitly mentioned in Scripture.
Yes. Even if the general tendency described as male, the implication is clear. Angels can assume any form required. Old people, children, male, female, whatever is needed for the specific purpose of the mission or the prophecy they are fulfilling. Appearance is purely strategic.
It underscores that their essential nature is formless, but their manifestation is entirely deliberate and controlled.
Exactly. But the final complex detail brings us right back to the physics of that genetic mutation process, the incubus-succubus mechanism.
Okay, what's the issue?
It's about energy dissipation time. The timeline seems vulnerable.
How so?
Well, think about it. The demonic act, the succubus collecting sperm, the incubus depositing it, that might happen relatively quickly. The exposure to the high-energy field might be brief.
Right.
But conception itself, the ovum meeting the sperm, fertilization, that biological process can take up to 2 days.
Okay, so the question is,
how does the corrupting energy, imparted during that potentially brief encounter, last long enough inside the woman's body to actually perform the genetic alteration work on the germ cells before fertilization happens? If the energy just dissipated instantly, like static electricity, the whole mechanism would fail.
that's a really good point, a potential flaw in the theory. How does the source address it?
It uses another analogy, this time involving thermal physics, heat retention.
Okay, like how things hold heat differently.
Exactly. Think about standing in the hot sun. If you quickly step into the shade, your skin, which is a thin surface, cools almost immediately, right? The thermal energy dissipates fast.
Yeah, happens quickly.
But now think about something dense that's been in the sun all day. A large rock, a swimming pool, even a thick piece of wood. They retain that thermal energy for hours, radiating warmth long after the sun has gone down.
Okay, I see the difference. Dense things hold energy longer.
That's the analogy the source applies to the human body as a vessel for this demonic energy. It argues that this specific type of spiritual energy is not like heat on skin. It doesn't dissipate easily or quickly from the human body, especially not for the deep tissues where the germ cells reside.
So the body holds on to it like the rock holds heat.
It persists. The biological matter acts more like the wood of the stone, retaining that powerful, corrupting energy imprint long enough. It provides, as the source puts it, tempora sobra plenty of time for the genetic alteration work on the germ cells to be completed before fertilization finalizes the embryo's genetic structure.
So it's a mechanism built on sustaining an energetic imprint within the biological system.
According to the source, yes. And that detail, addressing the time delay, is presented as solidifying the claim that this isn't random chance, but a directed, physics-based method of genetic engineering utilizing specific types of spiritual high hierarchy energy. #outro.
Wow. This has been an incredibly rigorous and, I have to say, pretty intense deep dive. We've moved from scriptural proofs of angels eating food to complex, almost sci-fi theories of genetic warfare.
Yeah, we've definitely moved way beyond the Sunday school images of spiritual entities today.
So just to synthesize quickly, the sources we've looked at firmly establish, or argue at least, that spiritual beings are fully material when they intervene. They demonstrate physical power that vastly exceeds human imagination.
Right. And this power, this capacity for material interaction, is used strategically by the dark side. They operate, according to these sources, a precise reproductive mechanism, this incubus-succubus carrier system, relying entirely on transporting human biological material and subjecting it to focused high-energy fields from powerful demonic entities.
And the singular goal, the long-term aim of this disturbing bioengineering project, to produce a specific lineage of genetically altered vessels, the Gigantes.
Designed specifically to host and manifest the fullness of power of high-ranking principalities and potestates, ultimately culminating, they hope, in the Antichrist figure.
It's a chillingly strategic picture.
And the sources leave us with one final profound observation about our modern spiritual landscape, a kind of paradox we started with.
What's that?
They argue that most people today lack real experience with God's angels, or at least they fail to grasp their true power, often because they barely believe in them in this tangible, powerful way.
Okay.
Yet those same individuals often readily believe in the dark supernatural. They fear dark magic. They might visit mediums or psychics. They instantly accept stories of demonic power, even attributing significant power to, low-level phenomena sometimes associated with local spiritual centers or practices.
So it seems easier for people to believe in the reality of the horror, the demonic interference, than in the reality of the glory and the immense power on the divine side.
That's the imbalance the source points out. Which leads us to the deep dive's final question for you, the listener, to consider. When confronted with evidence, like the kind presented in these sources, evidence of both immense divine power and profound demonic interference, why do we, perhaps as a culture, often seem to believe much more in the supernatural of the devil than in the supernatural of God?
Yeah, what does that spiritual imbalance truly mean for understanding who or what really holds the most operational power in the world today? Something to definitely think about.